Have a rowdy group tonight. I'd like to welcome you to the Olentangy Local Board of Education regular meeting. Tonight is Thursday, August 9th. We're in the Berlin Room at the Olentangy Administrative Offices. Mrs. Hatfield, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Bartz?
Here.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
And Mrs. Patrick?
Here. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I will now entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Hatfield, the roll, please.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
And Mrs. Patrick?
Yes, motion is adopted. Tonight we have two presentations. And first we would like to welcome Steve Dunn and Leslie Hicks from Mount Carmel. Welcome.
Thanks for having us tonight. We really enjoy the opportunity to present the updates to the Live Well program for the Olentangy Local School District. Mount Carmel values its partnership with the Olentangy Local School District, and we want to pursue the goal of increasing engagement in the Live Well program and also continue to cultivate the culture of wellness within this program. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Leslie Hicks, who is the health coach for Olentangy Local Schools, and she has all the updates regarding last year's program and also the enhancements to this upcoming year. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually started at the beginning of last school year. I know I didn't do the presentation, but I was here the entire year, so looking forward to this coming school year. But I went through all of the data actually goes back to 2015 for some, but building on that coming forward just to see the progression of the program. First, this is about Mount Carmel, just our little core statements here. Our mission, our vision, our values, that's not changed at all. Then better care, better health, lower costs. Worksite wellness and metabolic syndrome is basically our main focus. That is the main focus for most wellness programs. Again, we looked at the same employees since 2016, and then we have a different group that was just from last year, and then our recommended next steps. Health and wellness engagement at your work site helps to reduce barriers against gaining knowledge and skills and confidence in leading healthier lifestyles. Olentangy Local School District's program includes a full-time on-site exercise physiologist, which is me, to work one-on-one with faculty and staff. So I go around from site to site. Anybody requests anything, I go there, and I also do educational plans and constantly have a plan to move throughout the district. Additional Mount Carmel clinicians are mobilized to Olentangy Local School District sites as needed. Stress management, group exercise, diet, and nutrition. I did this several times last year based on our screening results. So if one school tended to look like they needed more stress management, I brought in a clinical social worker to meet with people. The diet and nutrition, I brought our dietitian that we have on staff to come around to certain sites that had more needs than others. An employee is at risk for metabolic syndrome if he or she has more than 3 or more of the following biometric markers. So these are just the things that we are screening for when we come in and do the biometrics. You're going to see these risk factors associated with like diabetes and heart disease, things that we're obviously trying to prevent, or at least prolong. Reducing metabolic syndrome is important because of the risk for diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and stroke. We got one testimonial. I thought this was really important because this was a person that was on staff here, and she actually had not participated in any of the screenings in the previous years. And I talked her into it, and she was counseled on her glucose levels, came back a little bit high. And one of our nurses counseled her on it, let her know that it was important to see a primary care physician and what her next steps should be. Obviously, she was aware of some of the other obvious markers that she was going to hit. So she went to the doctor, and surprisingly, she was not only, at risk for diabetes, but was diagnosed for diabetes. So we immediately started working together and taking those measures. She got on a weight loss program. She began to lose weight. Her A1C was already, jumping down, and we were already making progress. So the point to these things are to catch people, even before they get this far. But if we can catch them at this point, to kind of bring things back to normal. So here are the numbers, which is what everybody's worried about, is the expenditure. As far as well, we all know, being preventative is obviously going to be less of an expense down the road than not. So these are just some numbers, some pretty popular numbers that get thrown out there. The one with the 150 minutes of exercise per week can lower the costs. You can see there of more than $1,000 a year in healthcare expenditure. So this was one of the ones, employees in the program since 2015 actually, we've had a 2.1% improvement in risk of metabolic syndrome. So that's pretty good. And this district in general is pretty healthy from the beginning. So to be an overall pretty healthy district and then to even be improving upon that is pretty remarkable. 17% of employees had healthy changes in risk. 54% of employees didn't have any changes in risk, which means they've just sort of maintained consistency, which is also good. Overall cholesterol change was 8.6% with notable increases in HDLs, which is good cholesterol, which means people are being active. That's the only way that you can increase that, so that's good. 50 people improved blood pressure, which means they were no longer at the hypertensive stage. So in previous years, they came in and they registered a hypertensive, and they didn't at their next screening. As far as exercise is concerned, 111 people had healthy changes in level of activity, and 140 had unhealthy changes in levels of activity. That is sort of on a self-reporting basis, though, how they score themselves as either frequently or somewhat frequently exercising. But we had, that came out to a 2.2% change in that. Employees that were in the program that tested last year, of 386 employees had improved body composition. That's huge. So when we look at the grand scheme of things from year to year, the body composition is one of the larger risk factors. So for that many people to have made that improvement in 1 year is pretty good. In 2016, 4% of employees had less risk due to waist circumference than in the previous year, so in 2015. In 2017, we had an additional 1.2% decrease. So everybody's waists are getting smaller, which is good. We did have more diabetes or abnormal glucose levels than in previous years. And another thing with that too could just be whether people are actually truly fasting the way that is required for blood work. So, but district-wide, 1% improvement in risk for metabolic syndrome, and 1,040 on-site exercise sessions were completed by the staff. So our recommendations for the coming year, provide health and wellness program information at new hire orientations and staff convocation. So kind of hit them when they come in the door, make sure that they know that we're here and what we're here to do. And I actually went ahead and initiated this with the new hire, just putting the information out there, and I got a lot of feedback already from that. So I thought that was awesome. We are planning to follow up and re-screen metabolic syndrome qualifiers. So though this is a district with few people that actually do qualify for the complete metabolic syndrome, our plan is to, at the screenings, try to get permission from them to do follow-ups and then maybe recheck throughout the year so we can actually check those numbers and see if they're making any of the changes. Advancements to the One Community portal, that is the portal that everybody gets on to use to see their incentives, to see, different things that they can do as far as exercise and nutrition and things like that. Enhancing the program tracking to include wellness activities outside the district. So you don't just have to do things here. We want you to go outside and do things. Targeted education and activities to address employee wellness needs. So that sort of goes back to what I was doing before when I started last year. I assessed the screening results from every site and then made sure that they got the education that they actually needed for their area. And that's it. Any questions?
I have a question. Does anybody else? You said there was 1,040 group exercise. Was it classes that were offered?
So we offer the classes. We'll put out different classes. I actually have a yoga instructor that comes on site. I've got some teacher volunteers that instruct some classes, and myself. So and we have different groups, and I actually went around the district last year, so wherever we can get a space, we'll get participants. And actually 2 of our locations, when I left to go start another one at another location, they continued to have their own little group and exercise on their own. Some sites are a lot better than others, but anything that we can initiate and just kind of that awakening is good. But we had some good success with that this year.
We're going to start bringing it to our DLT meetings and be exercising while we're doing
I think
the
you
DLT.
should.
Might reduce the stress level, Mr.
Yeah,
Wright.
maybe the stress management side, yeah. Well, thank
I
you.
see a lot of employees at Mount Carmel Center. Right, Mr. Wright?
He's picking up his kids now.
No, he knows
He's
out.
there. He's not picking up his kids. He's there.
And we're continually teaming up and working with MC Fit to bring things to the school district. Last year, we got free classes for OLSD staff on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the month of November. So then I really put that out and really pushed that. And again, it's not to get signups, but just to get people active and just to let them find something they like, and so that they'll continue to do it. But we're currently, as soon as one thing sort of fizzles out, we start working on something else. So anything that we can team up and bring to the staff.
Any other questions?
Real good. It's a good report.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is Mr. Myers.
Good evening.
On our
Full
staff.
disclosure, I'm one of the 50 with reduced blood pressure. Right,
Are
Mr.
you?
Wright? Leslie's been monitoring my blood pressure, right?
In your position, that's a good thing.
I know. Well, good evening. It's been another busy hiring season, as evidenced by the addendum that you have tonight with the agenda. What I wanted to do first is, and I've never done this because this year was a little unique because of the redistricting and opening Berlin High School. I just wanted to walk through the staffing timeline of how we operated internally with some of the shifts in enrollment, and then obviously opening Berlin. Because our first priority was really to balance the staffing levels due to the redistricting and open enrollment, redistricting and opening of Berlin. So we initially, you see up there, October 2017, we posted internally for Berlin High School. So we allowed anybody in the district to apply to go to Berlin. So Mr. Spinner and his team conducted interviews and selected the internal teachers for those positions. We then posted external for Berlin November 2017, because there's some key positions if he didn't hire internally. For example, like the marching band director, choir director, he ended up hiring internal, but some of those key positions where we wanted to get the people on board, because there's a lot that goes on with planning and opening the school. We then did a second round of external postings in January for Berlin High School in anticipation of what was coming up in our high school staffing meeting and middle school staffing meeting, because by this time we had forwarded our catchments, moved our catchments forward with our enrollment to the new schools. So we had an idea of what the enrollment was going to be, and then we identified obviously the staffing levels that we needed in all of our buildings at this point. So we went ahead and posted because we knew based on what Mr. Spinner had already selected internal, we were going to have some external openings at Berlin. We then moved forward real quick after the February meeting with the middle school staffing, because middle school staffing meeting, if you remember from the enrollment reports, kind of the enrollment stayed stagnant this year. But we had a shift, the overall enrollment, the district enrollment, but we had a shift of enrollment between buildings. So like, for example, Shanahan Middle School dropped by a few hundred students, and we had to make some decisions to transfer teachers from Shanahan to some of the other middle schools. So we worked through all of that there in early March. And then lastly, we did the same thing with the elementary staffing, because again, with changes because of redistricting and enrollment, we had to identify elementaries who had a surplus of teachers, basically based on their new enrollment, and then who needed teachers. So we handled all that first, and then we posted externally to fill positions. So it was really quite a task, but really, I thought, from my perspective, very smooth. The principals did a really good job in getting us the information that we needed and working through the process. So I thought it went very, very well. So that was kind of unique this year in making the shifts of staffing. Then into recruitment. So I'll just review some of the strategies that we use in building our candidate pool process, because every year we kind of start over from scratch and building that candidate pool. And obviously the first thing I put up there every year, Olentangy reputation. A lot of people want to be in Olentangy. And that's a tribute to the Board of Education, our leadership, our principals, obviously the teachers in our building, the high achievement that we have. A lot of people want to be in Olentangy. And just a quick story, when we go out to the career fairs, most of the colleges, the kids know, the students know, I call them kids, young adults, candidates know about Olentangy. So for example, every year we'll do we'll target one out-of-state diversity or minority recruiting trip. And so when we're in Ohio, we fill up our slots to interview quick in a matter of 10 minutes. You know, out of state, sometimes they don't know Olentangy, so we have to do some more advertising. We this year hosted 8 internal career fairs and attended 22 outside. And this is a recommendation. The outside career fairs was a recommendation from the subcommittee, from the diversity subcommittee. So we have, I think when I first started, maybe they went to 10 or 11 job fairs, and now we've increased to 22. And really, the goal is we're casting a wider net. And I know there's a commitment from the Board of Education, from the superintendent, as far as our diversity efforts, and we want to try to attract as many qualified, diverse candidates as we can. The 8 hosted, one of those is internal, certified, and the rest are throughout the year classified job fairs, because in the classified ranks, it's dynamic. We're hiring all year with classified folks. So we really are trying to be intentional and purposeful of continuing to bring quality candidates to fill those positions. Certified sub-teachers, really good opportunity for us, because I was talking to Mr. O'Brien before the meeting. It's not easy to get into Olentangy. So if you have an opportunity to sub in the district for a year or 2, then obviously you're in front of our principals. So it's on-the-job training, and they get to observe you. As a matter of fact, we hired this year 17 subs from last year. So I thought that was a really good number. In our District Diversity Committee referral program, where we get referrals of diverse candidates from members of the committee. It can be from teachers, really anybody in the organization. So that's really helped the last couple of years. And I'll just kind of go through this real quick, but I want to point out the A candidate list, because all of these efforts build that list for our principals. Because you can see we have over 3,000 applications in our system. In a couple years when I first started, we had over 6,000, but we've cleaned that up. So basically, if your application is in our system, it stays active for 18 months. And after 18 months, it goes inactive unless you tell us you want it to remain active. So we've really cleaned that up. But we build our pool from all of our job fairs to create an A candidate list that goes out to our principals on a weekly basis, and we update it every week. So as we go to job fairs, we come back with the information, we update it, and it goes out to our principals. So it's another resource for them to use when they're screening and hiring. And then obviously, external job boards. I put Indeed up there because that's new for us this year, and that's we can post on there for free. So we've posted some classified positions because we were struggling getting like intervention aides, clinic aides. So we kind of thought, let's just try it. And the first weekend, actually, we tried, I think we got 17 applicants or 17 people interested to further look at a job. Onboarding and induction, I'll go through this, but this is really important because Mr. Rafe talks about this a lot, but we do a really good job in Olentangy of how big we are, making it feel small. And that really starts with when a person's offered a job. My staff in my office, they're phenomenal, and they do a good, just impeccable job with welcoming a new employee to Olentangy right from that first phone call, where a person feels very welcome. From there, we do small group new employee orientations, and those new employee orientations are more about the nuts and bolts and the paperwork that we need to have completed for the onboarding process. Then we have a new teacher academy. This year, we started a new administrator academy. The new teacher academy, really, I think 3 days, 2.5 days, where we get our new teachers together and start really showing them what Olentangy is. And it's a great acclimation and induction to the district where they really have a good idea going into, obviously, next week in the first week of school, what we are in Olentangy and what we believe in. And then obviously building level orientations throughout the year. All of our buildings do a good job with that. So we did this year just capture some data. One of our core values is we can always improve, but obviously if we want to improve, we have to have information and know what to improve on. So this year we did do a survey with all of our new teachers, started with our onboarding process, the small orientation groups, and then the new teacher academy, and from most effective to least effective, 0 to 10. So those are the average rating. And we had a little over 100 attend new teacher academy and 91 fill out the survey, so really good response. So we were happy with that. We just got these results, so we'll drill down into the comments and obviously continue to see what we can do to make that better moving forward. So resignations and retirements. These are the numbers. Certified, you can see 45 and 6, administrators 8 and 1, classified 67 and 17. There's a quote up there from a retired teacher, and really I think it's a testament to how we continue to support our teachers through their career in Olentangy. New staff members employed this year, so as of today, 107, 46 from that A candidate list, and I just want to point that back out because we talked about that, building that list, so hiring 43%, I think is a good number. And again, I know you guys always like to see this, but this year, 15 Olentangy district graduates. We had some really good applicants who graduated from an Olentangy high school and came back and interviewed and were selected, so we're happy about that. 21 administrators, 7 of the 21 promoted from within. So we think that that's good too, and recognizing strong leaders in the organization where we can promote into administrative positions. Classified 121, and then 10 Olentangy graduates in that group.
We did have one administrator who was an Olentangy grad.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, one administrator. Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna have to get on my team about that. Good job. Now this is what we're really proud of, because again, I think of looking at this report. So again, when we employ when we onboard our candidates, they fill out an EEO form and they either declare or undeclare. So we count obviously the ones who declare, because if they're undeclared, technically we can't count them in the minority recruitment efforts. But if you look at the certified, 13 out of 99, 13.3%, classified, 11.24, and 25% for administrators. And I will tell you, since we've started collecting the data, I believe it was 2010, like the number, that's the highest number we've had in a year.
And I think that's higher than our minority
Population.
student population,
Yeah.
according to the CUP report. I think percentage-wise.
Percentage.
Depends if you're talking the non-white percentage
Right.
overall.
Because, I think there's
Subgroup percentage.
there's different data sets out there for that. And so Jackie Powers, our supervisor in equity and inclusion, she asked me the question, she said, what do you think made the difference? And quite honestly, I think, number one, it starts with your commitment from the board level and from the commitment and support that Mr. Rafe provides in the district. I mean, that's number one. I think that this past year we were very intentional and purposeful on obviously recruiting quality, diverse candidates. And I think really the fruits of our labor paid off, and we're real happy with this, with the progress that we're making. Okay, budget, and this is another thing obviously we use within the five-year forecast that we help build twice a year. We hired 107 new teachers, 56 were for growth, which is right on target in the forecast. Average years of experience, 4.61. That's the budget metric that we use at a master step 3, 536. You can see we came a little, just right in under that. So those are things that we monitor, obviously, that we want to be responsible for out of my office. So we definitely met that. Overall, in the district, we have, that's FT, 1369.5 FT, 1398 total bodies, classified 835, administrators 106.5. ESC, we still employ quite a few people through the ESC, certified and classified, and then our substitute pool, and then we are now over 2,500 employees in the district. Okay? So any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When we opened Berlin, knowing that some of the kids were in the district, so we were educating them last year, and you know how we pull kids from Olentangy up, and so some teachers from all over the district went up with them. Do you know how many new teachers we had to hire because of the opening of Berlin? Like, I'm assuming, you know, the band director and the choir director, but classroom teachers, because some of them
Yeah.
would have been teaching students last year.
Right.
you
So
know?
we had, so in the district, we had 82 total transfers. 40 of those were to Berlin, and I believe he's 70 some. So we're about 30 some, and we were almost spot on what we put in for growth for Berlin. I think we put 35 positions in the high school
For new?
for new,
Okay.
for growth. Yes.
Yeah, but that would include your band director and your choir
Correct.
director, which
Mhm.
you'd have to hire anyway, but,
Correct.
okay.
Any other comments? Because I have a compliment for you to take back to your staff, as well as Mrs. McMurray. I have a neighbor that just went through New Teacher Academy and came to us from Marysville, and she was pretty blown away. She's like, I guess I didn't have much to compare it to, but
Right.
very outstanding experience.
Thank
So
you.
go
And they-
compliment your staffs.
And the curriculum team they've done. I think somebody asked Jack, they said, what is this, utopia? He said, no, it's Olentangy. Right?
Well, she also mentioned she has a mentor, and hers is Bill Warfield. She lucked out big there. And so what do they do throughout the year? Does he touch base with all of the people on his team? Yes?
Yes. Is that,
You can chime in.
Can I chime in?
Yes, please.
that's new this year, new little.
We broke the groups, we grouped them according to either their content or their grade level.
Okay.
And so members of the curriculum team spent a lot of time with those groups. And so we called that our home base group.
Okay.
And so I know I had, being in elementary my whole career, I asked to work with some high school folks. So I had the high school ELA and social studies folks. And so I spent 3 or 2.5 days with 19 of them. And so I will touch base with them the first few weeks of school. We pledged that on our own team that we would touch base with them at least once a quarter. I know I sent an email out to my group on Friday afternoon, and so some of them have emailed me back and asking some specific questions. So not only do they have mentors through either the RESA program or just in their building, if they are a veteran teacher, but we also from the curriculum team are touching base with them, making sure that they have all of their needs met. It's just another face from central office to help
Well,
them
it's
out.
nice that they feel they have a direct link to curriculum, right? So,
Yeah, a lot of support,
Oh.
a lot of support.
I'll add a compliment too, since you're
Okay.
just share a little story. I met a family at a restaurant about a month or so ago, and he's a Olentangy graduate, recent graduate from school, and first job at Olentangy, and he was extremely excited. And I think Mom was even more excited.
Yeah, oh, I bet.
You could just tell in the conversation, she pumped.
Right. And just real quick, before I leave, I just want to just recognize Lori and Amy, because we also do this with our bus drivers, 3-day in-service, and their theme this year is driving force in education, and a lot of positive feedback from our bus drivers about how purposeful and meaningful the in-service was this year to get them ready to go for next week, right? So I wanted
How are we
to,
doing on our bus driver hires? Because in
We're-
the past, we've had
we're great,
good.
right? 100%. All routes are
Or you're
covered.
gonna have to drive a bus. We've had that happen before.
Not week one, right?
I even saw too, they've changed the release time first day because those elementary kids, which was great planning, those elementary kids get off the bus at like 4:30 because they're all running late from their first day. So I was glad to see the schedule was changed to account for that. Because those kindergarten moms and first grade moms are freaking out. So,
Great idea.
all right, thank you, Mr. Meyer.
That was Mr. Rafe had that. Oh, that was, thank you.
Thank you. Every time it's mine, I got to make sure somebody knows.
Okay, the board president's report. Good evening. Welcome, everyone. As we all know, August has been a very busy time of the year for our district. All summer long, so many staff members have worked tirelessly to prepare our 25 schools for the arrival of our students. It's quite a remarkable undertaking, and I'm certain on August 15th, everyone will be full of that first day school excitement and Olentangy pride as we welcome over 21,000 of our fantastic students. So there's nothing quite like that excitement and buzz that first day. This August also presented us with additional and wonderful reasons to celebrate. Last Sunday, the community came together for the grand opening of Berlin High School. Principal Todd Spinner was on fire and told the crowd that Berlin pride is forever, and I have no doubt that his infectious energy and spirit will help the Berlin staff and student body quickly discover what makes their school so special. Thank you everyone that worked so hard to make that new high school building a reality. It really did take a lot of people to get that accomplished. And if you haven't already, I encourage you to take some time to visit the new facility or attend an event this fall. I'm going to pause there because Mr. Bartz has a facility update.
Just really
on Berlin.
quick, related to Berlin, I'll put Mr. Gordon on the spot. I know he's going to give an update coming up. We met last night. But one of the things I wanted to point out for the board was that as of last night, it could change a little bit, but the building costs are, we're going to finish about $1 million under with contingencies. That could change a little bit. Mr. Gordon said, you know, don't book it until it's actually booked, but right now we're looking at about $1 million plus or minus. And he'll have some other updates coming up in one of the next upcoming meetings about the additions and other things like that. But I thought that was worthy of mentioning tonight, and to get out there to thank him and Mr. Runyon and the whole team for keeping our promise to the taxpayers. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Yes, and I also noted that he oversaw that project while running 24 other facilities, so that's quite an undertaking. Thank you. Finally, the busy month also presented an unexpected visit to the district from President Donald Trump. In a moment, we'll have Mr. Rafe share information in his superintendent's report regarding the course of events leading up to that visit and answer questions that district administrative offices have received. I have also received a great deal of emails and calls regarding that event. As was stated in the district communication to the community, the district does not support or endorse any political candidate or party, but Ohio law requires the Board of Education to permit a committee representing a candidate or public office for a political party to use school facilities to hold meetings. And so we did. We did not invite the president to speak at our school. In fact, the timing of the visit was not ideal because of the grand opening of Berlin High School the very next day. I thought it was overshadowing what has been so long in the making. Our district mission is to facilitate maximum learning for every student. That is our focus and why we are one of the most outstanding and fastest growing districts in the state. It's unfortunate the timing of this visit, but in some ways, It's unfortunate that the timing of this visit by the president has in some ways taken the spotlight from good things we have all strived to achieve here at Olentangy, and I think it's time to put the spotlight back where it really matters and focus on an exceptional school year. So with that, I will conclude my president's report. Mr. Rafe, your superintendent's report, please.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome all of our guests. So happy to have some guests here with us. You're going to notice a little new format in my report. We got, new minds in communication getting together, and so new format. So I'm changing the title of Good Things to Examples of Where We Are Living Our Mission. I say all the time to staff, I've got the easiest job in the district. If everyone simply puts the mission of the district in their heart and lives the mission of the district, my job is the easiest one around. So obviously, as Mrs. Patrick just highlighted, the ribbon cut. And Devin, did you take that picture of Spinner? Is that yours? That you? That really does. I don't know if he's just letting out a primal.
He was chanting Berlin Pride.
Oh, was he?
That's what he was chanting. Yes.
Primal scream or something, and then there are the people streaming into the building. It was just a great day. There's a picture of Mrs. Cozy, as we indicated. She's the lady who donated the majority of the land, and she is so proud. And Mrs. Patrick taking a picture of some cheerleaders and the mascot. So it was a great day. I think there were, or at least Spinner proclaimed, 4,000 people there. We're not sure of his math skills on that, but there were a lot of people there. There was parking everywhere. They were already parking in the grass, illegally parking, so they were practicing for the first football Friday night. Yeah, so. Another example of living our mission is we were getting ready for school year. Here's some pictures from our new teacher network, our new teacher academy. Yeah, that's the old name. I know, change is hard for me. I did address the group. So they're very fortunate to have this part of our onboarding process. This is beginning my 30th year in public education, and I think in 1989, the math department chair at Maple Heights High School threw me a set of keys and a book that I don't know if he was already throwing it at my head, anticipating but that was the onboarding process in 1989. Our curriculum team does a great job of getting these teachers ready to perform to meet our high standards here in Olentangy. Another way we're getting ready for the school, a new requirement is that every building must complete a functional drill. It's a new safety drill. It is an added layer of preparedness. The functional exercise is designed to evaluate plans, policies, and procedures during a simulated emergency situation. It's a new requirement by the state of Ohio and must be done now every 3 years. So all of our buildings are going through this. So as an example, the principal, the front office staff, the people that would be first in line to deal with an emergency get a simulation. Somebody calls them, they're in a room, somebody calls them and says, the example I heard yesterday was, it was a parent, didn't give his full name, said the name of his child, the first name of his child has been exhibiting a lot of strange behaviors. He's been missing for a few hours, and the 3 guns in our house are missing. And he hangs up. What are you going to do? So I do foresee us in the future adding to a lot of different layers of this drill. When our new Director of Safety, Security, and Preparedness comes on board, he will be leading the implementation of further training. So just as an example, we're discussing with our staff the possibility of, in the future, maybe doing drills where we a lot of districts are doing drills where they have blank gunfire. Because until you hear it, until you know what it's like, until you experience, you're not going to, if you've heard it in the past, the chances of reacting better in the future will increase. So I'm really looking forward to bringing that director on board. So now our new title for these areas are items of note. I do want to give a recap of our event that was held at Orange High School. It was, I don't know, I think the number I heard was attended by close to 10,000 people. We got a request from, actually it started with the Ohio and Delaware County GOP to check on the availability of our facilities and whether or not we would rent our facilities for a political event. And that request came on late Tuesday afternoon. I checked on the availability of all of our high schools, depending on what their parameters were, and which were available. Initially, they were talking about Berlin High School, but Berlin High School had not been officially grand opened, so that wasn't available. Olentangy High School's auditorium, gym seating was too small, so we began discussing the possibility of Orange High School and Liberty High School. I got a call on Wednesday morning, early Wednesday morning, saying that decision had been made to not use any of our facilities or request any of our facilities because the event organizers wanted to go to the Delaware County Fairgrounds because they'd used that venue previously and felt comfortable with it. Once the event got billed as it initially was posed to me as a rally for State Senator Troy Balderson, who was running for the 12th Congressional District, and that there was a possibility the president might show up. I was relieved when they made the decision to go to the fairgrounds because I knew the tremendous logistical issue we were going to have. I knew that our policy 7510 allowed political groups to use our facilities free of charge. I also knew our facility rental guidelines allowed people to rent our facilities, and there are laws regarding the open access of public facilities. So essentially, if you're willing to rent them to one group, you have to be willing to rent them to any group. So that's where I started immediately thinking. I got a call early Thursday morning that because of the response to the Now Build Trump rally, the overwhelming RSVP for the event, that the facility originally chosen at the fairgrounds was not going to be big enough for the event organizers, and they started looking for venues that would be big enough. The gymnasium spaces at Orange High School and at Liberty High School are the biggest venues in the county from a seating standpoint. They're the biggest venues in the county. So I met that point in time, I met with the event organizers and the Secret Service to begin examining the possibility of using either Liberty High School or Orange High School for their facility or for their rental. We began at Liberty High School approximately at 10 a.m., did a walk of the grounds and all of the possibilities. Obviously, a lot goes into an event when the president is going to be there. The entrance, I originally thought Liberty would be a better site because there's just simply more ways in and out of there from a road standpoint for the crowds. There's more land, there's more parking, so we were looking at Liberty High School. Liberty actually had a 26-team field hockey event scheduled for that afternoon, and while I think we could have made accommodations to move their parking to a certain area and have their venue, it was going to present problems for the Secret Service. So around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we went over to Orange High School and did the same thing, the same walk. It took a few hours to look at all the space and find out where they could put secure rooms for secure lines in case the president would need something like that, where they'd bring the motorcade and all those things. So We made the decision. We also looked at the availability of orange. There was one event scheduled in the high school, in the stadium. It was an alumni soccer game. The Secret Service was allowed that event to continue. So we were allowed to have our practices up until the time when they took over the venue around noon. And so everybody got to practice. All of our events went on as scheduled. The only thing that was moved is that soccer event wanted to use the Commons after their game for a picnic. And as it turned out, it was a nice day and they could host the picnic outside. So I determined at that time that wasn't enough of a deterrent, so we went ahead and scheduled the event. I began scheduling the event under the guise of our facility rental guidelines in that they were offering to rent our facility. I knew, again, we are required to rent our facility, so we started negotiating a contract with the event organizers to rent our facility. I immediately thought of many other events that are held in a question I've fielded regarding this event is why they were allowed to sell merchandise. Well, people that rent our facilities sell merchandise. That's been in the contract. Most event organizers, most of the people that rent our events do that. Our boosters who rent our events sell merchandise. So I never considered that wouldn't be part of the contract. So we went ahead and entered into a contract with the event organizers for a rental fee of $7,000. That fee was determined by the amount of estimated custodial costs and field maintenance costs to clean up after the event. It was using our facility rental guidelines, the number of hours we wouldn't have our facilities available to us for our own use. So that number, that's how I arrived at the $7,000 number for the event. Again, the event was very well attended. I think by most accounts, I think it was very well behaved. People had an opportunity to come and participate in the event. People had an opportunity to come and protest at the event. I did receive email from people who were at the event and indicated to me that they felt it was well attended. There were a few incidents where we received questions regarding the event. The Spirit Rock was painted repeatedly with political statements supporting President Trump. The Spirit Rock was painted by our students. I do have, I wouldn't say every single time, but I know for a fact, because I spoke to two parents whose children, actually, they admitted to me that their child was one of the ones who was continuing to paint the rock. After we kept repainting it to try to remove the political message, because we don't want to give the impression we are endorsing one candidate or the other. Unfortunately, someone at the event raised a flag with President Trump's picture on it underneath the American flag, which is strongly against flag etiquette. We came to discover that the locking mechanism on the flagpole at Orange High School had been broken, and it actually had been it was damaged prior to this event. It wasn't damaged by people at the event to hang the flag. So it has since been repaired. We have also inspected all of the other locking mechanisms on all of the other flagpoles on our premises. Another specific incident that was addressed by community members was the sale of merchandise outside on the grounds. Those vendors were private vendors. They were not affiliated with the with the event organizers, and they were asked to be removed from the premises by the local sheriff. There were other political statements stapled to telephone poles and things like that around the grounds. Again, as we were made aware of any incident, we addressed that as quickly as we possibly could. So in conclusion, I understand and appreciate both sides of this issue. I don't want to be involved in politics. I don't want to give the impression that I'm endorsing any candidate for any, all I want to do is take care of our kids and do everything possible to facilitate maximum learning for every student. But I also think this was a unique opportunity to have the President of the United States on our campus. It was an opportunity to, for people to participate in the process. And most importantly, it was an opportunity for them to consider their vote on August the 7th. So I did say to all involved with the party, I enjoyed meeting people from the White House and the White House staffers, and Mr. Paduchik, one of our residents, is with the Republican National Committee. Everybody was great to work with. So I have a lot of respect for the work that they do, and I did tell them as they were leaving, though, don't come back. Thanks for being here. But, you know, it was a good opportunity for us. We are going to look at our, re-review our policies related to this material. We are going to review our facility rental guidelines. I have spoken extensively with our legal counsel regarding this matter, and he has reviewed a lot of information that I sent him, and has assured me that we have, based on the statute, our board policy, and the board's fee schedule, the district was both authorized and required to rent the premises to the renter. Pursuant to these laws and policies, as well as the First Amendment, the district could not deny the renter's request due to the viewpoint presented on public questions and issues during the rally. So I do believe we have complied with the law and our policy, and I'm happy to move forward from this event.
So, quick comment, if you don't mind. So,
I never mind.
Yeah. So from a personal standpoint, I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, but myself, I certainly supported the opportunity for people to speak. At the end of the day, we got a lot of mail from people who were angry, upset. One of the things we teach the kids I know in the district is the idea that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights guarantee everyone the opportunity to speak. In my opinion, you cannot take off the blanket of free speech and use it to your own devices. So with that, the valuable lesson is that the opportunity was presented. Teachers can use this as a moment to teach kids the importance of understanding how our government works, understanding how it was set up by those who have sacrificed much more than I certainly have, and put it and use it as a learning opportunity. The folks who stand up and say what horrible people we are, they're not going to vote for levies because of it. Short-sighted, narrow-minded, if that's your choice, I'll let them make that choice because they have the same right to say those things. Mm-hmm. So that's all I'm going to say. It's over. It's done with. One comment we did get from a resident who said that that this was a stain. I'm pretty sure that words and people in buildings don't stick on walls, and it depends on what you do after you hear the words. Mm-hmm. So I voted Tuesday, hoping everybody else did. That's the best place we can make that happen. So.
I have one question. Was there any damage by having that many people on premise?
Crumpled.
Jeff?
Crumpled dead grass, probably.
Is Jeff here? No?
I'm not aware of any damage. Just any of any.
No, Tron, yeah, Mr. Smith said, nope. So honestly, it's like we didn't, other than, I think we, maybe a couple signs that were still left somewhere around on the grounds and things like that. It was amazing. They were cleaned up and out of there, and again, the number of kids that were there really, I don't know if I would say surprised me, but just the diverse population that was there was, just interesting to watch. I went to make sure I had firsthand knowledge of exactly what was going on and be the representative to the district there. I was there from around 4 o'clock until 9:30 or so. I was lucky enough. I did get a spot in the back near all the security personnel, and kind of walked across an empty parking lot, and used my badge to get in the back door by the weight room where it's kind of like behind the scenes, and I ran into a couple of Secret Service guys that I'd met through this process, and I said, "Hey guys, nice perimeter. I walked right in here. Nobody even saw me." He goes, "Oh, we had eyes on you the whole way." So
Funny guy.
I'm certain, yeah. The Secret Service really isn't a chuckle fest, so.
Well, we appreciate you keeping eyes on our
I just had
facility.
one question, because the president did mention several times it was hot in the building. Is that because of our cost-saving efforts during the summer when we turn our air conditioning down, or was it because of too many people? You know, we do
Yeah.
try to save money since we did
You know,
the least amount of
there were
people.
you know, the better part of 2,500 people in the gymnasium. I discovered after the fact, and Jeff, I'm not sure if this is really an attributing factor, but they had put up a lot of curtains, blocked the cold air returns, so that may have been, you know, causing some stress on the AC system. We kept the doors open for the better part of 4 hours to let people in. And then once those doors are open and all that hot air is coming in, it just really stained. The upper parts of the gym actually were fairly comfortable because that's where the air was blowing, but it just wasn't making it down to the wall of people. So it was warm.
Our air conditioning was running the whole day. When I left about 1, the gym was comfortable. It had been warm earlier. They had all the doors open, moving things in. Then we did their security sweep to close things down. The gym was at temperature, and then when they opened the doors again, and I'm sure the curtains didn't help that, the flow of air. But we had an HVAC tech kind of checking it throughout the night because it was so hot, and everything was running full go. It just couldn't keep up. It's not designed for that many people. Doors open in 90-degree weather during the summer.
Yep. So, and I do appreciate Mr. Paduchik. He is an Olentangy resident. He is here. He is with the National Republican NRC, and
RNC.
NRC. Excuse me. It's easier to say NRC. And he did come today just in case there were specific questions you had for him, because he understands. He understands the impact of an event like that on a community, and he's here in our community. His kids go to our schools, and we're proud to have him as a member of our community. So,
yeah, let me just say, politics is a tough business. I've been doing it for 32 years, but the local politics is the toughest. The city council, the school board, it's closest to the community. You're dealing with people's kids, emotions run high. I appreciate what y'all went through during this visit. I wanted to make myself available in case any of the neighbors had concerns or problems so that I could personally address, questions or issues. I know that, politics has inserted itself in so many ways in our lives with school walkouts, with political events. It's tough. So I appreciate what you go through, and I just wanted to personally thank you as a resident, as a parent with students here. We moved here 3 years ago. We love the district. We love the schools, the teachers. Your team did a fantastic job. Superintendent, all the employees were fantastic in a very difficult, short time turnaround. They reacted well. They were accommodating. Everyone was grateful for what happened. But again, I just wanted to apologize because I imagine, just so I know some of the things I get, so I can only imagine what you got in terms of emails or letters or phone calls.
Just a couple.
You all really don't deserve to go through that. You sacrifice a lot of time away from your own families and jobs and other things to do this. This is an act of service. I just want you to hear from someone that's a resident, a taxpayer. I'm grateful for the work that you do. I feel like my kids are getting a world-class education in an environment that is safe and beneficial to their development. So I know people come to these meetings and complain. I just wanted to come and say thank you.
And I think we really appreciate you being here tonight.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
yeah, the last, just in closing on it, I kept reflecting on a quote that the Delaware Gazette runs frequently on their editorial page, and they attribute it to Voltaire. It says, "While I may not agree with what you have to say, I will defend your right to say it."
Yep.
And that's what what this came down to for me. So, moving on. So we have 3 discussion items. Mr. Geiger and his team are here to discuss a TIF project at Polaris. I think it's really a very, very interesting project that will benefit our community in the future. We have the second reading of the district calendar. Mr. Wright's going to summarize the feedback we got on the district calendar. And then Mr. Fetty is doing a special edition board policy update. As you know, it is always puts you right on the edge of your seats. So action items, we have 2 action items that are board action items. The Polaris tip proposal is before you as a board action item, and I'm proud to have on there the renewal as a board action item of Mrs. Hatfield as our district treasurer. Very good. And then other action items include our district calendar, the contract for fiber redundancy with Consolidated Electric that will completely stabilize our network and provide a great, much greater confidence that we won't lose our network. And then the bus stops, routes and stops for 2018 are up for approval. We are very proud of the work that Lori's done to route efficiently this year. Last year we had 149 routes that you approved, and due to her efforts for efficiency and better routing, due to our efforts to pull back on some non-public transportation and institute our walk zone policy effectively, we are asking you to approve a total of 150 routes.
Wow.
One
The new
additional
school.
route. So far.
Well done.
So far.
So far.
There may be others.
Okay.
So. She has the authority to change them after you approve them. And then there's just a long list of things going on. Obviously, August 13th is a big day. All of our we have our elementary open houses. That's just a great tradition here in the district. Our kids come back. They meet their teachers. They're so excited. Power School went live with schedules, and I only got one text from a community member asking to change the schedule, so that was all good. That's down from past years. So.
Pretty good.
And then obviously August 15th is our convocation is the 14th, first day of school is the 15th, and that's just, it's just so great to get the kids back. I can't wait to get out and be with them. So with that, any questions?
I have a question, since Mr. Gordon's still here, about the Consolidated Electric and the fiber. So is this contract, whoever's got that, are we directional drilling again? Are we going underground? Is this some other sort of project? Anyone can tell us?
Mr. Sexton.
Mr. Sexton?
All underground.
Okay, so these are the guys that did it last time and came through my neighborhood.
Yep.
And chewed up driveways.
Yep.
Hit a gas line.
Yep.
I'm just, and so, however they route, there's all kinds of grass, but when they have to tear up somebody's driveway and then they do this patch job, with all due respect, whatever you can do with these before we bless it, well, we're going to bless it regardless. If you could nudge them and say, maybe think it through a little bit more so that, I didn't get my driveway, but I was out there smelling gas when it was Suburban had to come out and shut it down because they banged the line. So in general, I would ask that the consolidated people have some consideration for people's properties and what they're doing as we award this lovely contract to them again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Okay, moving on, Mrs. Hatfield, the treasurer's report, please.
So good evening. I wanted to take the opportunity to put together a PowerPoint for you this evening. As you know, as we come into August, we're very busy and there's lots of moving parts going on in our world as well as the academic world for our students. So I wanted to make sure that we took a moment to address all of those items for you. We have several presentation and discussion items. Of course, Mount Carmel came today. We had Mr. Dunn and Mrs. Hicks come and present about the wellness program and the progress that we continue to make with our staff to become healthy and aware of their health status. This is a great addition to our wellness and our benefit program, as it helps us to contain and make conscientious choices about our health and where we stand as individuals, which helps our claims utilization. So as we continue to move forward with those programs, we're working on building some data that we can use to help ourselves in our claims, as we are self-funded for major medical insurer. We have the Polaris TIF on the agenda tonight as well. Mr. Geiger and his team are going to give you an overall presentation of the project and what's included, what they're looking at in terms of the Polaris area and where in the Polaris area that they're considering for this project. The proposal for the agreement is a 20-year, 50% TIF agreement. That proposal suggests the district participates in the TIF by contributing 50% of the tax collections on the incremental valuation increase that the new construction or infrastructure improvements would generate. So not current dollars, not current collection or tax dollars that we receive, but any of the growth in the valuation and tax collected on that growth is what we're considering as part of the proposal for the TIF contributions. The project is intended to sustain and grow the economic success of the Polaris corridor. The estimated fund over the 20-year life cycle, the estimated contributions is roughly $40 million from the district. But within that 20-year life cycle, we're also looking at collecting, because of the 50-50 split, increasing our own collections throughout the life cycle as well due to the increased valuation. So we're helping ourselves by helping our community grow in a sustainable way and creating valuation in our commercial area. Those calculations were based upon estimated increase in valuations put together by Mr. Geigert's team at our current effective millage rates. And then the City of Columbus is also being asked to participate in this project. So the city's approval will be the final measurement that would enact the agreement. The board is asked to participate because it is above the legislative 1075% that they are allowed to enact without board consent, and so that's why it's before the board's approval tonight. The other item for discussion that relates to the treasurer's world is the policy update for federal procurement policy. And I know Mr. Fetty is going to speak to this, but one of the reasons I wanted to mention it is because it relates to uniform guidance or accounting rules and the levels that we set for federal procurement. There was legislative that changed those levels of opportunity for spending. And so we want to enact those new regulations to allow our staff to be able to follow those guidelines. So it's more of an accounting procedure than anything else. So I wanted to make sure we spoke to that for you and answer any questions you may have. We do have several action items on the agenda tonight, most of which you've seen in the past. I would say the two biggest exceptions would be the June financials. Not really an exception, but more so it's the close of our fiscal year. The district closes their books on June 30th of each year, and so these June financials reflect where we ended our fiscal year. We were less than 0.5% in variation on both our revenue and our expenditures, so we landed right where we thought would be in reference to the May 5-year forecast. So that's good news. Excited to have that information come in where we thought we would be. Couple of items of note were just in the revenue, having a timing issue with the receipt of the City of Westerville sharing agreement income agreement funds coming in. It came in right at the end of the month. So there was just a timing with the processing of that payment as well as getting it on the books that showed that we were under our revenue forecast. But not substantially so, and it posted in July. So it will be included in our next forecast update. And then expenditures were slightly under on our personnel or payroll services and slightly under where we thought we would be in terms of savings in our purchase service category. So overall, great news. For donations, we have 2 donations that we would like to formally recognize tonight. We have a donation from the Olentangy Athletic Boosters to Olentangy High School. They purchased uniforms for the group, totaling over $14,000. We also had OYAA donate topsoil for the fields at Scioto Ridge Elementary, totaling about $350. So we want to say thank you to those individual groups for their support of the community and our schools. We also like to thank all donations that we receive, whether they're formally recognized or not, and especially for those that volunteer their time and really help in the efforts of supporting our staff and students. The last item on the agenda that's a unique item is the Section 125 cafeteria plan document. And essentially, all we're doing is updating that plan document. We are allowed, by having a Section 125 cafeteria plan, to deduct medical premiums from our staff's payroll pre-tax. And why we're giving this adoption or this update to the plan is to include the FSA, our flex spending account that we introduced that came out of the negotiated agreement with our staff. And so we just have to update that plan document to make sure that that's included in the language and it's all in compliance with IRS regulations. So department updates. We have several things going on in our department. Just as academics and our buildings do, we, as we stated, have the 2018 fiscal year completion, which means we are currently going through our audit procedures. The Auditor of States Group has moved in actually on Monday and have started that process to audit all of our records. So they will be in and about the central office, talking to our staff, talking to our technology staff, food service staff, and any individuals that might have information about policy procedures or have an opportunity to place requisition and spend public funds. So that will continue through the fall. Typically, that's wrapped up in December or January, and when the results are released to the public. We have a bond sale that is currently taking place for the $9.5 million in bonds that we're selling from the 2011 voted issue. That bond is for the elementary additions to fund that project. We did reduce the amount of asking on that to take actually to the market. Original estimations were at $10.5 million. We found that the storm shelter requirement was delayed, so we no longer have to meet that regulation. So we took a look at what can we reduce from the project overall and what might make sense to add to the project or be included in that project while we have those building wings under construction. And so we've added estimations for additional playground space to make sure that the students have access to playground space that they can get in and out of effectively, as well as looking at the security measures in the vestibule areas of those buildings and being able to make some adjustments for that now while we have construction in place at those 3 buildings. Just for the community's remembrance, it's Wyandotte Run, Alum Creek, and Arrowhead Elementary. We are working with our insurance broker to go through an insurance request for proposals. That's one of the items that we take care of and do out of our office as we look at our major medical carriers and ask that they reply with estimations of how they can help us reduce costs on our plan. It's not a change in plan design. I want to make that very clear to our staff and our constituents that we support. It's not a change in plan design, but really taking a look at who can offer us the best cost of that plan. So we will be processing those with our insurance committee and finishing that up in the fall so that we have renewal rates ready to go for open enrollment in November. And lastly, we have the 5-year forecast preparation and submission that we're looking at. House Bill, excuse me, I just lost that number. House Bill 87 was enacted into law by Governor Kasich last Friday. That one of the amendments to that bill is to move the October forecast filing from October 31st to November 30th due date. One of the ideas being that some folks are in November elections, and so they want to be able to include that data in that forecast update. So we're going to monitor that and see what the actual implementation might be for the district, or if it's a choice, or what those nuances are. We'll continue to monitor that and give updates within the next month or so as more information becomes available. But regardless of the filing date, we did do a July update to the forecast that we presented in May. The update has not been filed with the Ohio Department of Education. It is simply an update for our information. This update has several items that we have reflected or put into it in terms of assumptions that are different from May. So what we've included in what you see before you are June actuals, where we landed for fiscal 18, the salary awards as a part of our negotiated agreements that were passed in June of this year, anticipated savings from adjustments made to the major medical plans that we negotiated this year, and then additional costs associated with the elementary additions. The changes were not significant enough to require us to refile anything with the Ohio Department of Education, but we wanted to make sure that we were doing our due diligence and showing that to you with all of those components together. I know that we had discussed the negotiated agreement impacts at the time that those were presented to the board for vote, but we didn't have our June financial fiscal year-end numbers available at that time. So we wanted to show that combined effort. Items that will go into the update as we moved into the October or the fall update is what I'm going to call it until we find out for sure when our filing date is finalized. We will have the final settlement of tax year 17 collections that will attribute to changes to that fall filing. We will have our actual versus budgeted staffing levels that could change the outcome of our major medical RFP renewal rates, and updated enrollment rates, and then any other exceptions or changes that might occur in our expenditure side of the house. So overall, we were confident that we had a marketable negotiated items with our unions. We were happy that they landed where they were and that we were able to work through some insurance concessions. And so this reflects those savings and those costs throughout the 5-year cycle. Of course, we have fiscal 18 is the first year, so our current year, and then out through fiscal year 22. As we get into the fall, we'll look at adding fiscal year 23. Are there any questions? I know that was kind of a lot thrown at you all at once with just those numbers. Yes?
Just for clarification, back on the insurance RFP.
Yes.
If another company is selected, it wouldn't be until January 1st, right? Until that would be implemented?
Correct. We typically we have a calendar year plan design. That's a very valid point. We have a calendar year plan design, so January through December. So it would take effect in January, and we would see a half of year change in premium for fiscal year 19, and then a full year in 20 and beyond. Yeah. So once.
Comment. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead if you have a question.
Just comment on the Finance and Audit Committee about a week ago. I appreciated that Emily did a nice job of explaining the whole bond impact for the 3 elementary expansions. So that group got a good idea of what that was all about. So that was a good thing to have had in that discussion.
Thank you. Yeah, I felt that committee meeting was very helpful overall to talk about, to continue our education piece and the monthly financials where information is located in those items. So if they get asked questions or people have concerns, they have talking points that they can use, but also in the bond and the permanent improvement updates. And then we looked at this financial July update as well. It was a good meeting, lots of good conversation, and we're able to answer questions and have them feel confident in the information when we were finished. Are there any further questions or comments? Do you have any? No? I'll make one last comment, if you don't mind. I would be at a loss if I didn't acknowledge the fact that my contract is up for renewal on tonight's agenda. So I just wanted to say thank you for considering that renewal. It's very humbling to work with such a good group and to continue to serve the community in this way. So thank you for your consideration this evening.
Well, thank you.
He's always very good participant.
Should I talk loud? Is everyone asleep? I'm kidding. This is one of our longer board meetings. Do we have any public participation this evening?
He just left. So I guess no then. Mr. Paduchik had.
Oh, okay.
He got to speak.
Yeah,
it,
he
but
kind
he-
of
he's
spoke
better.
early, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, finally, if you're still awake, welcome. NP Limited Partnerships. Please come up to the podium, and we are anxious to hear about the Polaris 2 TIF.
Good evening, members of the board, Emily, Superintendent Rafe. You guys have a lot going on in this community. I'm just going to tell you, it's an exciting place. But I want to introduce myself and my team. I'm Franz Geiger. I'm Managing Director of Polaris Centers of Commerce. And I just realized I'm in like my 20th anniversary. I've been doing this way too long. And then I have Andy Weeks from Van Trust Real Estate, who's a partner of ours in a project called The Point you may have seen at the Gemini Interchange. And Scott Zients, who's an attorney with Vorey, Sater, and Peace. And they're here to help me in case I don't speak clearly or explain things very well. So I appreciate their help. And one other thing about your school district that I will say that I compliment you on, because I hear about these things, and what you do with kids with special needs, I think, is commendable. I hear about it all the time, and it's I had a brother who had special needs, so I think that's great that you have done that, and you're known for it. You have a great reputation, so thank you for that. Polaris Centers of Commerce has been a great development. It's been a great development to be part of, and as you know, if you've been through Polaris, and there's a lot going on, and there's a lot that's happened over the years. I think we're now about into our 30th year as a development. And we work really hard to keep it nice. And I know that as you guys get criticisms of things, we get criticisms too. It's too much traffic, or why don't you do this, or there's too much retail, et cetera. But we try really hard to keep a nice development. We have a Polaris Owners Association, and we take the landscaping of the interchange and the common areas very seriously. And we want to be an asset to the community as well. And we view Olentangy as an asset to our development. So we've had a strong, successful, really career, and we want to continue that. We want Polaris to be sustainable. And I guess I just forwarded that there. Okay. And this is an overview. You can see on this particular slide, I mean, all the density that exists there to date. And the good news is that we still have some acreage left. This is a Polaris plat. This shows we have about 140 to 50 acres left for development. Now, that development, and I cite that development, there's key things that need to happen in order for that development to take place. We have infrastructure needs that exceed what we can fund through our current TIF. And I don't know how familiar you all are with TIF, so I don't want to go too much in the weeds on a TIF, but the bottom line is we do have a TIF in Polaris. It's called a non-school TIF, which means of those values that have been increased over the years through development and the tax revenue that's created, we get 25% of that. When I say we, it goes to the Delaware County auditor, sends it to the City of Columbus auditor, and it's used for public infrastructure, for roads, sanitary, all the utility extensions, things like that. Olentangy to date has not participated in the TIF. Olentangy's portion is about 70 to 75%. I don't know exactly the right percentage, but right around there. With our current TIF also, TIFs run for about 30 years. This particular TIF is going to be expiring at the end of 2027. And we do have, so that TIF has some revenue that will be created over, that continues to come into the TIF to fund infrastructure, but it's not nearly enough for the needs we have. We also have this land here that we have that's undeveloped. And some of this land cannot be developed without additional public infrastructure. What we are asking is for Olentangy schools to participate in the TIF on this particular land. And actually, to more specific, it'll be the land that is in green on this map, to participate in the TIF over a 20-year period. The TIF will be for 30 years, but Olentangy's participation would be for 20 years. And the ask is, of your current amount that you would receive or what you would get under law, which is about 75%, that you would share in 50% of that 75% would come into the TIF to fund infrastructure. And the reason we need that, and the reason we're asking for that, is we have road improvements and certain types of development that we would like to see take place. That we could, if we can know that we can do the infrastructure and we can do these things quickly, we'll be able to increase the tax base much faster. So we'll create revenue, we'll create development at a faster pace. We'll open up land that we currently cannot develop. And in fact, I'm just going to point this particular area out because you probably have seen it, but it's the area along I-71 here. There's about 40 acres. What we'd like to do, and I'll show you a map in a second, is extend Lyra Drive up to Powell Road and do a roundabout. That particular project is a $10 million project. We want to do that immediately. We don't have the funds to do that and the other things that we want to do at Polaris, including other road improvements. We don't have utilities to that land. So that land's been sitting there, not producing revenue for 30 years. We feel once we get the infrastructure, when IKEA Way went in, look what happened. We got IKEA, and now there's going to be a Topgolf, and there's other things that can happen. But the infrastructure leads to development. And the one thing that was said by Emily, which is true, is we're not talking about, so what happens is when we develop this land right now is not producing revenue for the school, okay? And if it is, it's marginal. With development, we're going to increase the value of that property. So this is new value, and this is on a go-forward basis. On this new value is where we're asking you to participate. And we feel with that participation, we can make Polaris great and greater, and we can make it sustainable. Because people say, oh, these type of developments, they're 30-year, and then they move, the cycles are over. We hope not. We have a lot invested, so we want to make it more sustained. We want to compete with the other developments that you've seen in town, or in Dublin with the Bridge Street project. There's projects in New Albany, even in Westerville, which is, some of it's within your school district too, but those are the type of, we compete with the suburbs in central Ohio, and we want to have projects that meet the needs of the demands of today, that people want to go to a development. We don't want people to get caught in traffic like they did last year over the retail season. They can't get home, and they're sitting there and they're like, they get traffic fatigue. So those are the things we want to avoid. So with that, some of the future road improvements, this particular map shows some of the road improvements that are, and I put kind of a number to the improvements that will take place and in the order that they would take place. We would do the old amphitheater. If anybody went there in the good old days, there were drives that came off of Polaris Parkway. Those will be made into public roads that will open up additional land for development. You can see those are 1 and 5. One is the first road that we would do, about a $2.5 million road. I know it's hard to believe how expensive roads are, but you guys know because you spend money on the schools and you know how it can go. And then,
Consumer of asphalt. We spent a lot of money on asphalt.
right. I know. And it doesn't last as long as they promise, but it is what it is. And Lyra Drive, extending that north, is really the one that I've wanted to do for years. And we finally have approval with the City of Columbus on a design and the location. We got approval from Delaware County in terms of tying into Powell Road. But you can't quite see it up there, but there would be a roundabout there. And that road's, I think, a strategic road, because even with all the road improvements that are going on, there's a large population north of Polaris that cannot get to the development easily. They have to go all the way around. And what we have found, we've lost some tenants, and we don't want to lose any more, but we have found that people get through the traffic and they don't want to come back. They want to just stay at home. They've had enough fatigue of driving. We want to make it easier so we get people think there's so much traffic, Polaris, most of it's regional. There's not another interchange for 10 miles, so we carry the burden of a lot of regional traffic. What we want to do is the people that live there, make it easier for them to come and use Polaris. So that's part of the reasoning for Lyra Drive. There's other improvements here, lanes and signals and things like that. And then also, this is a project over on Polaris Parkway. They are doing some of those improvements now on the right turn lane to South Old State, but there will be additional curb cuts and turn lanes and some additional lanes where there's just some shortcomings in the current design. I will go into this a little bit on the financial analysis and talk about what it means for you, and I've kind of described it, and that's really hard to see. So hopefully you have, and if you don't, we do have a packet to give to all of you. So we have of those public improvements, and I have a list of the public improvements that I'll go into. And it's mainly the roads that I just talked about, sanitary lines, water lines, and also one thing that we want to do is more dense development, which allows us to do public garages. If you've been to the Point project, you realize that there's a garage there. It's hidden pretty well, but those are also eligible for public dollars. And the significance of those is it allows you to do a more dense project. And I'll show you why that's important in a second. But as I stated, this would be a 50-50 split between the school district and the other participants of the TIF, and it would be for 20 years. And it would only be on new revenue or new value that gets created. And the TIF would be 30 years, so after the 20th year, you would get your full amount of taxes, but you would hopefully, because we have projected this development that will take place, it'll be on a higher value, so it'll be a larger number. But the cost of our public improvements, and this is without any financing costs, is $63 million. So that's our need. When you put on financing costs, that number balloons up to $128 million. So we're going to need to borrow money through selling bonds to fund these improvements, and then that revenue will go back to pay back the bonds. And we think we can finance about $33 million of improvements with this additional participation, which is a significant chunk. It really helps us get the projects going, and it will really help, I think, increase the value of the real estate. So what's the benefits to the school? Because we are requesting something, so how does it benefit you? Well, as I was stating, it's going to get commercial development underway now. We have a project that Andy and I are working on where we did phase 1. We want to do phase 2, which would be another $50 to $60 million project. It would have a public garage. We want to start that in the spring. If we can't fund the garage, we can't start it. We want to get Lyra Drive built now. If we know that the funding is there, we can go out and borrow the money and get that project kick-started and get it going, which opens up about 40 acres of ground. So it accelerates the development schedule. It creates immediate construction. It creates momentum. It allows us to compete with our competitors and remain a viable development. The other critical fact for you, and we have been, it's a commercial development. We do have some multifamily. The multifamily does not generate the kids like single-family homes does, though, and we will not build single-family homes in our development. Our development is meant to be a intensely commercial development. That's what we want to do, and we hope we can continue to generate the revenue. This is just a graph that shows the percentage. So the blue is what would go, the blue is the total amount of dollars that are projected to go into the TIF. The red is Olentangy's portion. If you notice how Olentangy's after the 20th year, Olentangy gets back up to that 75%, as the graph shows. So it's a 20-year term, but then you get back up to almost the 75% amount. These numbers, this is the list of improvements that I've identified with the cost of the improvements. And this is just a schedule showing you the valuation. You may wonder, well, how do you guys know what your revenues are going to be? Which is a fair question. So the way we did that is we are projecting out with these improvements what kind of development can happen and how fast it can happen. Now, real estate cycles happen, economies change, so they're projections. But we have a pretty good sense that we will develop all of this land if we can do it with if we get the infrastructure we need. We also know, based upon history, if we have a parking garage, what that means in terms of valuation. It just increases the value because you can do a more dense development. And then this just shows some of the net revenues. It does show that if we don't have, even with the participation, we're still going to, if we did all those improvements, we would have a negative cash flow. So you may say, well, then what are you going to do? Well, we're going to have to find other sources. There's other sources for dollars for infrastructure that we're going to have to compete with, for state and federal dollars. Now, this is just a case study here. Not really a case study, but it's a comparison. Many of you maybe know where the Hilton Hotel is, and you know where the Microsoft building is. That's where my office is. That building, where the Microsoft building is, that's on 10 acres of land. Okay, the value of that building is somewhere around $19 to $20 million. The project that we've done to the north, which has a parking garage, is about 350,000 square feet. But the value on 10 acres, so it's almost 3 times the size of the building we currently have, or at least twice the size, but then the value is about at least 2.5 times, because the value of that project is $50 to $60 million. So one's 20, one's 50 to 60, and the reason is we can do a lot more development with a parking garage. Phase 2 that we plan on doing is that we need a parking garage to make it happen. It would be what we call vertical mixed use, kind of an open air, so we'd have more of the restaurants and retail and 2 hotels, an office building, 120,000 square foot office building, and residential units. So, and why is office important? Well, office is important because we need the mixed use. We want people to work in this district. We want them to be close to where they live. We have a tenant, and I won't use their name or his name, but he lives up near the lakes. They are in our office building. They occupy about 40,000 square feet. He said, Franz, we need 13,000 more square feet. I'm like, thank you, we'll take it. But the point is he wants to be close to where he lives. And so office is an important component. It's hard to do. You don't get the returns on it, but with the parking garage, you're going to be able to get the dense office. And again, the valuation of that will be another $60 million. So now all of a sudden, on 20 acres, we've created about $100 million versus the office building on 10, where you have all that sea of parking. And by the way, we have plans to add a hotel in the front of that office building because some of that parking isn't used. And with these mixed use, you can there's formulas, some of the parking's used during the day, some of it's used at night. And so if you congregate those uses, it's a more efficient use of parking. And so that's another important part of the project, is to do these type of projects and allow us to compete. I mean, we want Polaris to be the choice versus an Easton or Bridge Street. We want them coming to Polaris. These questions we'll supply. They're in packets. If you haven't got a packet, we'll give them to you. But these are just more specifics about a TIF and what it means, and any questions that you may have. But in just summarizing, we have had a great run at Polaris. We've enjoyed the relationship that we've had with Olentangy, but we feel like we're at a critical path. And we want to continue to see the development grow, and we want to even do it faster. We want to take advantage of these good economic times and get it done. And so we're asking for your support and your participation in this TIF going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have some
And
questions?
I'll take any questions if you have any.
Question. Regarding the residential that you're putting in, is it similar to the apartment complex that just newly opened?
Yes.
There, and because it doesn't look like you're marketing to families at all whatsoever. It's like 1, 2 studios.
Those are 1 and 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
The demographic in there is either couples or singles. We are not marketing that particular project at all to families. It doesn't mean you won't get a young child with a younger couple, but it is not really geared. I invite you guys to check it out, but it's even the amenities. It's a very nice development that probably doesn't feel that really appropriate for kids because you just don't have the space.
Less than 1,000 square feet.
Oh, that's like your largest apartment?
No, it's not the largest. The average is like less than 900 square feet.
So in that essence, I mean, it's a moneymaker, you know, for property taxes, really.
Right. It's not going to create, some of the people, it's interesting, you meet a few of the people that are living there, but they either commute to Cleveland or Cincy because it's convenient to 71. But our goal is to do some executive housing in there. A lot of Chase people come in and they don't want to stay in a hotel, so they'll rent some of the units. We've had some requests from some of the office tenants that we have for executive housing, but it's definitely not a kid-oriented place at all.
And then this question, I don't know if you know this, but you had stated at the very beginning we're making very little off the property now. Do you know what the amount is that we're getting in taxes from that farm property that's, you know, there now?
I believe on some of those parcels, we were looking at about $500,000 in collections. What's difficult to establish is some of those parcels are splitting and moving and changing, and so trying to peg down that number was a little bit difficult to get a specific, but in terms of the growth and what we could get, it's a big change in a positive way for us.
Right.
I have a quick question. So when you build everything out, have you done studies on the number of additional vehicles and things that are going to be in the area? Because we do have some choke points everywhere.
South Old State.
Yeah, well,
that will de-choke itself, but it'll still fill
Eventually.
up. But, you know, as the people coming on some of the developments to get onto the interchange is always a difficult thing, and the backup that now occurs on Gemini. So now if you're going to develop the east side of 71-2 with these additional roads, you're going to be bringing extra traffic from the other way. So, I mean, do you have a feel for that? And as part of your master plan, you want to put in roads, how are you going to then, at the same time, try to take that or alleviate some of that congestion?
Well, a couple things. On the first traffic studies, there have been a lot of traffic studies done, and City of Columbus and Morpsey just did one. And actually, in Morpsey's study, Lyra is one of those. Connectivity is an important thing now. It also creates traffic because it makes more people able to go a certain way. But the more outlets, inlets you have, the better. And if you think of Polaris, there's not really good north-south. It's mainly east-west. So we think that this north-south will help. The other thing that's a huge issue, and it doesn't even affect anything we're talking about because it'll be funded through some other source, but if you try to get on to 71 at 5 o'clock, When ODOT designed it, everything funneled down south of Polaris Parkway.
Yeah.
There's these barrier walls that funnel that traffic. The goal is to open those up at Gemini because you can move. The traffic's moving on 71, but you can't get over to it.
Right.
And then everybody's queuing for 270. Well, there is a plan that ODOT, I believe, is going to do in 2019 where they'll add 2 lanes, 270 to 270 westbound, and you'll be able to get on to 71 earlier. I think that'll help a lot in the congestion, especially during the retail season at the holidays, because last year you could not move when there was an accident. So we need more outlets. There is going to be more capacity. The other thing that we can't totally measure is if the Big Walnut interchange ever happens. I mean, Delaware County needs more interchanges. It's with the growth that's going to take place, at least southern Delaware County, you look at those, we're pretty much developed out. I mean, there are pockets still of pretty big, large pieces, but we need more interchanges. So I think some of that will help. And then the one thing that we're trying to get our arms around is smart cars and all that. I mean, how that all plays into it. I can't. You can only predict so far out, and you hope that. But we have looked at a lot of these issues, and City of Columbus is going to continue to look at the traffic needs. I mean, the stuff that's on the books right now is you got Lozelle Road's going to be starting, the widening over to 23. We're living through South Old State right now, and then Polaris Parkway, with some of the existing TIF, is going to be widened also over to Westerville.
I have a couple comments. We've had the Delaware Board of Economic Development, they've been in, and they have also spoke to the point of how imperative it is to our roads that we live where we work. So there, I think we welcome any new office development, hotel, something that's not a home, and in eventually generating revenue. I think, again, we're supportive in the fact that you're not taking away any current money that we are receiving, and that it's 50% of any new potential money. And I have had several people say, well, can't you make them stop developing as far as houses? And we're always needing, new elementary schools, and we can't. But we can work with developers that are promising to not put in single-family homes, that we can, work together to try to control how quickly we do develop. So we appreciate that. Thank you for coming and presenting.
And thank you for your comment, and I agree. If we can get people to work closer, that will help the traffic situation as well.
And the quality of the roads, Anybody else have questions or comments?
That's covered pretty well.
No? Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience, that you were
Thank you.
far down in the agenda. We appreciate you sticking around. Okay. Our next discussion item will be Mr. Wright and our 1920 calendar.
Yes, you'll be pleased to know I was going to start with the history of the district calendar since 1954. But I squeezed it down to 3 points.
Okay, we'll allow it.
We are very excited to share the results of our first ever thought exchange to gather our community feedback. The process garnered 1,726 participants. Last year, in our typical spreadsheet gathering where we took comments from people, we got about 400 comments. So this many participants, Chris and I said too, as we were going through this, that it didn't mean how many people engaged with it last year, but that's how many people provided comments. These 1,726 people, they either provided a thought or did ratings. So across that, we had 1,007 thoughts shared. And many were similar, or were very similar in nature. And we were able to pull those together in a lot of ways. And truthfully, I could have brought you a lot of data to show basically what we've learned in the past 3 years talking about our same model. The other thing that's very interesting, though, from those 1,007 thoughts, our 1,726 people rated 37,190 times. Which that provides a great amount of, again, when we're doing a Likert scale, basically 1 to 5 stars, it provides a quick way for our people to say, I like this thought, I don't like this thought, yes, no, no, and anything in between. So we are very, very, very thankful for those that participated in this. We did not gain new insight. Our parents of younger children, elementary and middle school, they all are in the comments of our school year starts way too soon, and our school year ends way too soon. But we still don't have a solution to provide that. And we had just about an equal amount of people say, we love the calendar as is, thank you, great, thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback, keep up the great work. We did get great feedback. They love that we are able to offer a 2-week break at the winter break for this draft calendar. It is not something that we guarantee. We will look at that each year, and again, our goal is to maximize learning, and our goal is to make sure that we can provide the best calendar for our kids and our staff. Beyond that, we developed some other consistencies. They noted it, but I do not bring any changes to the calendar with you, but I did want to share the feedback that we received. So we are presenting the draft as presented at our last presentation, and ask you to approve that for the 1920 school year. Any questions?
Well, just so you know, Georgia has already started school.
Yes,
So
they're in school.
I guess it could be worse.
It could be.
Hey, did you have any high school parents request all-year school?
Did not see that. No. Honestly, again, because they pulled out even some of the minor thoughts, and it didn't gain enough. Again, with 1,000 thoughts, we did not have a chance to go through it. They were grouped by category. So
I have one question about January 3rd. That is a teacher work day, right?
Yes.
And I'm assuming that it is for grade report card?
Yes, as part of the new contract, or the last contract, we do have a work day at the semester. So instead of pushing that onto the next week and pushing out the quarter, which ultimately that decision keeps our teachers from coming back after Memorial Day. So us scheduling that work day the Friday before students come back in January allows us to have our teacher work day in May before Memorial Day.
And so could they work from home that day? Are we
That's
firing up all our buildings for that?
That's a great question. We have talked about that in theory, and it has been presented to us by one of our principals who worked in Virginia, and they had green work days. So we will talk with Mr. Gordon's group. I know we have in the past kind of worked a 4-day week on those two weeks of winter break, and if it is something that we can look at, we are well aware. All of our teachers have laptops. They have the ability to grade a number of assignments from anywhere. We'll have to look at what is the most appropriate way to run that teacher workday.
But we're running buildings for sporting events over the holiday, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, believe me. Yes.
But we're not heating them to the extent we would with a full group of students in them.
The academic ones.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you.
Great question. Anything else? Thank you very much.
And last, Dr. Fetty with
we've been waiting
his
on all
update on policies.
Good evening. I present policies 2271, 2340, and 6325 for a first reading. Are there any questions?
I think we should ask questions just to.
I asked the procedural for the meeting, but he couldn't
College Credit
answer.
Plus.
That's a
So
thing.
now, if I'm understanding this policy correctly, if students are not scoring proficient scores,
Right.
they're unqualified.
Yeah, if a student is not successful in a course, it limits their ability to repeat additional courses so as not to run up a district tab on courses that the student has not proven their ability to be successful in. So it's just reining it in a little bit. It's a state change that we are implementing.
And on a related but not policy note, I heard that there might be a change with books.
They were tried, and that was Senate Bill 216. and the governor just signed it, and I can't remember, I think they took that out.
Yeah.
I think it's
Peggy
still
thinks
on
they
the
took it out
backs
too,
of the
yeah.
school district. Because 216 was going to have the parent split the cost, but I think they took that out in the final draft of the bill. I was reading 216 because they changed your bands for teacher licensure.
Yes.
So
Yes, you
that's-
reported that to me. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? All right.
Let's let him go.
You're done. What a spunky group.
I've been here a long
We should
time.
do a stretch.
No, we shouldn't.
Okay.
We are going to do a stretch.
Yeah,
We
we're
are doing a
gonna do
stretch.
it. We're going to take, right, I'll take a motion for executive session as permitted by section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code to consider the employment of public employees
So moved.
Second.
at 7:55.
Take a vote.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mrs. Feasel?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
And Mrs. Patrick?
Yes. We will return to take action items, so please excuse us.
We'll be back.
We'll be back.
You just have to call us back to order.
Okay, I'm calling us back to order.
We're going to load it all up here.
All right, so now I need a motion for board action items A and B.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
let me
Oh,
do
wait,
that.
I'm sorry, I need
Yeah,
to
we
pull
need to-
out A.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So we're only
So
gonna
we're
vote on
gonna
B right
reverse
now.
that.
Take a
So
motion.
let's rescind that motion.
Okay, let's rescind the motion, and I need a motion to approve item B.
We're going
Board
to do B
action
first.
item. Yes, we're going to do B first.
So moved.
Second.
No, Mrs. Feasel?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
And Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I will entertain a motion for board action item A.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Feasel?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
And Mrs. Patrick?
Abstain. When you're ready, Mrs. Hatfield, the treasurer action items.
Thank you. I'd like to present treasurer action items A through E for approval, please.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Feasel?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
And Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Rafe.
Yes, I will
Present your
start by presenting superintendent action item A3 for approval first.
Excellent
A
move.
through E.
So just A3.
A3 is the certified
That's what
Wednesday,
makes
Saturday
so
school
much money
instructors per,
working
At
Saturdays.
$50.
So moved.
A second, please. Can I second?
Yes, you can.
I didn't think I could.
Sure you
Okay.
can. It's a free
I'll
country. We
second.
already had that discussion.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Feasel?
Abstain.
Thank you. Mr. King?
Yes.
And Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Thank you.
so now I will present the remaining A action items and items B through I for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Feasel?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
And Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Meyer.
14A1 for approval.
So moved.
I'll second.
Mrs. Feasel?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
And Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
He wants so bad to do a no. Before you adjourn?
Did he want to say no?
He does. Before you, are you ready to adjourn? Can I say something before you adjourn?
Yes, of
I-
course.
I just want, on behalf of all of our staff, and I know our board feels the same, we're going to express our condolences to Mrs. Feasel on the
Yes.
passing of her father. If anybody ever questions her commitment to this district, she's got a wake and a funeral to attend in the next 2 days, and she is here having diligently read every item on the agenda and participated. So
Yes.
We know your dad is at peace, Julie.
Thank you for your time with us.
All right, I will now take a motion to adjourn.
Move. Second.
Mrs. Hatfield?
That was fast. Okay. Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
and Mrs. Patrick?
Yes, we are adjourned. Be here again September 6th.
I know, so